The wind-off shipbreaker bay smelled of brine and old iron as it slammed against the ramparts of Storm's End. Lightning stitched a crooked scar across the clouds, throwing momentary light onto a figure striding along the ancient battlements. A young man in a black leather jerkin, shoulders broad as the castle's merlins, rain sliding down his shaven scalp. Gendry paused at the weather-worn crest of a stone stag chiseled by artisans long dead, laid his calloused hand upon its flank, and felt its chill seep into his bones. This was no longer merely the keep of the Baratheons. It was a proving ground carved out of cliff and storm, and it now belonged to him, though half the realm would call that claim treason. He drew a ragged breath. Below, the sea raged like a forge fire hammered by gales, and the sound was comfortingly familiar. Iron striking iron, the melody of his former life in the smoky bowels of a king's landing smithy. In those dim days he had pounded out nails and horseshoes with no notion of his blood. No dream but to earn enough copper for brown bread and a pallet on the floor. Now he stood where kings had stood, with a banner yet to be sewn and a name he scarcely dared say aloud. Footsteps sloshed behind him. "You'll catch a fever," Ser Davos Seaworth muttered, hood drawn low, salt-flecked beard dripping. "Inside, lad. The lords are waiting." Gendry flexed his fingers, still more accustomed to a hammer than a sword. "Let them wait. They've done naught else since Robert wore short pants." Davos granted him a thin smile. "And you mean to change that?" "I mean to make them remember." Gendry's gaze swept the Black Sea. Storm's End was forged for a fight. So was I. They passed beneath the battlements, torches guttering in the salt-drenched air. The castle smelled of damp rushes and old secrets, its halls echoing with the distant crash of breakers, the heartbeat of the Stormlands. Word of Gendry's arrival had spread quicker than plague. A royal bastard no longer content to hide behind an anvil, come to claim the seat that Stannis Baratheon had abandoned in his doomed march on Winterfell. Some called it poetic, others blasphemy. Lord Penrose, gaunt and sharp as a pike, awaited them in the great hall beside a cask of sour red. Lady Ermazond of Mistwood, scarcely 15, clutched a fur cloak twice her size. A score of lesser knights lined the walls, their armor patched, banners faded. They looked on Gendry as farmers eye a sudden wildfire, dangerous, but perhaps the destruction they required to tear up old roots. "I thank you for answering my summons," Gendry began, voice steady though his stomach churned like the bay. "You know my name." "Some of it," Lord Penrose said. "Rivers, is it? Or waters? Bastards have so many names." Gendry's jaw tightened. "Baratheon will do." "Might." Penrose tilted his cup. "But names are wind. We care for oaths. Who stands behind you? No armies march from Dragonstone in your honor. No Tyrell roses in your lapel." Ser Davos stepped forward. "He stands on his own 2 boots, my lord, forged from honest labor. That was enough for King Robert once, and mayhap the realm could do with that memory." A murmur rippled along the benches. Many present had followed Robert during the rebellion, remembered the hammer-swinging prince who cracked Rhaegar's breastplate by the trident and crawled half-dead to Storm's End with nothing but fury to keep him upright. They measured Gendry's shoulders, the broad span of his chest, the stubborn set of his brow, and saw the ghost of that stag-lord. Lady Ermazond rose, cloak dragging. "If Storm's End must have a lord, better a Baratheon than a Lannister puppet. But a crownless lord is a beggar. How will you feed us when winter sets its claws?" "Steel feeds hungry mouths in wartime," Gendry said. "I spent half my life crafting blades for gold cloaks and whoresons. I'll do the same here, but those swords will bear the crowned stag, not the lion. Your sons will wield them instead of mercenaries, and the coin paid by other lords will fill your granaries." The hall quieted. The notion was bold. Turn Storm's End into the smithy of the south, as Volantis was to Essos, forging weapons for coin and allegiance alike. It would anger the Reach, threaten the Crownlands, perhaps draw a dragon's glare from across the narrow sea. Yet desperation breeds invention, and the Stormlands had starved too long on memories. Penrose sipped. "Words again. Show us forge fires blazing by moonrise, and perhaps you'll have more than my curiosity." "You shall," Gendry promised. "But first, proof of blood." From inside his jerkin, he withdrew a river-worn loop of leather strung with iron rings. At its center dangled a lump of blackened gold. A stag's head, crudely beaten during long nights by flickering forge light, the first sigil he had ever hammered. "King Robert made this for me," he said, voice low. "When I was a boy in Flea Bottom before Jon Arryn hushed it. I kept it hidden, never knowing why it felt heavier than lead. He laid it upon the high table. Now I know. It was waiting. The torches hissed. Thunder groaned over the sea. Lord Penrose, who had fought beside Robert against the Tyrells at Ashford, reached for the talisman with trembling fingers. He turned it over, eyed the crude strokes, the warped antlers. Tears glazed his lashes. "I remember the king's handicraft," he whispered. "He claimed no hammer could mold gold to shape but his own. Gods forgive me. I believe you, boy. No horns blared, no septon recited lineage. Only the hush of awe settled upon the great hall, momentary and fragile. But in that hush a seed took root, watered by old loyalties and salt tears. One by one the knights of the Stormlands knelt, slowly, as if uncertain they still knew the motion. The sound of knees upon stone mingled with the breaker's roar until it became something new, the birth cry of a dynasty. That night, Gendry walked the ramparts again, torch in hand. Rain had ceased. A pale half-moon silvered the bay. Ships' lanterns flickered on distant waves, traders from the Stepstones, or perhaps spies from King's Landing. The realm would stir once ravens carried news of a black-haired bastard crowned by storm and steel. He expected Lannister gold to begin flowing south with mercenaries in tow, and perhaps a raven of disapproval from Queen Daenerys on her black wings. He feared none of it so much as he feared disappointing the ghosts of the keep. Robert, Stannis, even Renly with his smiling court. A king, a supplicant, a dreamer. Now a bastard meant to be all three. "Seven help me," he murmured to the serf. "I am no lord. I'm just a smith who shapes destinies," came a voice soft as a cat's tread. Arya Stark emerged from the shadow of a tower, gray cloak billowing, sword belt snug at her narrow hips. Nymeria's fang pendant glimmered at her throat. "I heard the lords kneel," looked like a start. Gendry's grin was weary, lopsided. "If I'd known being noble was so easy, I'd have claimed my rights years ago." "You'd have lost your head years ago." She leaned upon the parapet beside him, eyes reflecting moonlight and distant storms. "Cersei's knives were everywhere then. They still are. You're dancing on daggers now. Better than dancing on ashes." His gaze lingered on her. How far they'd both traveled from that Brotherhood campfire where a skinny girl and a nameless bull shared stolen bread. She was half wolf now, half shadow besides, but her smile, when it came, was the same. Fierce, fleeting, blinding. "Come quietly," she said. Davos found a passage through the lower bailey, an old tunnel blocked by rubble. "If we clear it, you can slip out if the lions come roaring. I won't have you dying for a crown you haven't worn a day. I'd sooner die here than run." His voice broke, surprising him. "Storm's End feels, right? Like the anvil my master kept beside the forge. Cracked, blackened, yet strong enough to break the world's back when the hammer falls." Arya regarded him a moment. "Then we'll die here together if it comes to that." He laughed softly. "You're mad. Stark blood," she replied. "Mad as wolves." She drew needle and placed its point upon the stone between them. Moonlight slid along its length like winter on a river. "Swear you'll keep your head, Baratheon. Swear you'll not rush feet first into glory." "I swear," he said, pressing 2 fingers to the blade. "But if glory rushes at me, I'll hammer its skull into a helm." Arya's smile curved. "Good." Days passed. The castle awoke as though from a century's slumber. Gendry spent dawns in the old armory, coaxing flame from forges that had grown cold since the last Baratheon departure. Sparks danced like fireflies as he pumped bellows, stripped to the waist, muscles slick with sweat and soot. Davos balked at seeing a new-minted lord blackened like a coal boy, but Gendry insisted. Storm's End would smell of steel again before it smelled of silk. Peasants trickled in from Rainwood and the Dornish marches. Smiths seeking coin, orphans chasing bread, maesters' apprentices hungry for knowledge. Gendry set them to reforging rusted pikes, repairing chainmail, crafting spearheads by the hundreds. At night, the lower Bailey glowed orange, and the clangor of hammers echoed across the sea, carrying bold rumors as far as Tarth. Merchants began docking under black and gold banners, hawking or grain and whispers, yet not all visitors came bearing trade. One wet afternoon, a lone knight rode through the gates beneath a dripping crimson banner, a golden lion crowned by laurels. Rain beaded on his gilded breastplate. Crimson wool clung to his narrow frame. He removed his helm, pale gold hair plastered to his brow, and called for Lord Gendry to face him under guest right. Ser Tymon Lannister of the Red Keep, cousin to the Queen's Hand, had arrived to negotiate. In the great hall, Ser Tymon knelt politely before Gendry's antler-carved seat. Her Grace Queen Cersei offers Storm's End amnesty, he announced, voice smooth as Dornish red. Lay down your pretensions, surrender the castle, and you shall retain the title Lord of the Rainwood, with lands enough for your children, should bastards' luck grant you any. Murmurs circled the benches. Arya toyed with her dagger's hilt, the smell of blood already filling her nostrils. Davos watched Gendry, worried. Gendry stood. He wore no crown, only a leather jerkin blackened by forge work and an iron hammer strapped across his back. His eyes were blue as shipwreck glass. Tell Cersei I am Robert's seed, grown tall in spite of her weeds. Tell her Storm's End bows to storms alone, not lions wearing stolen crowns.
Se timuns lips vista.
Stubbornness is admirable in stags. It is less so in orphans. The storm birthed me, Gendry replied. It will bury those who stand against me. Thunder cracked overhead as if to seal the oath. Ser Tymon rose slowly, rain dripping from cloak to flags. You have chosen rebellion. I have chosen home. Tymon's hand slid to his sword pommel. 24 Baratheon guards leveled spears before he could breathe steel. Davos raised a placating hand. Guessed right, he reminded them. The man shall leave unharmed. Tymon's glare promised red dawns, but he turned, cloak swirling, and strode out. The uneasy hush lingered like smoke. Gendry sank onto the stag throne, muscles trembling not with fear but anticipation. The hammer had struck the anvil. Sparks would soon fly. Over the next fortnight, Storm's End prepared for siege. The castle's ancient cisterns were scoured, granaries stocked with barley and onions. Ravens dispatched to every Stormlands holdfast bearing Gendry's call to arms. Some lords answered, Selmy of Harvest Hall, Connington of Griffin's Roost, even Lady Shira Errol with her meager levy of archers. Others hesitated, weighing Lannister gold against Baratheon honor. Too many remembered Stannis' grim fate on the snows of Winterfell. Fewer recalled Robert's thundering victory. Gendry spent the nights planning with Davos, sketching defense lines on rough-hewn tables, marking culverts and sally ports. During daylight, he roamed the yards, teaching raw recruits to swing hammers as he did. Two-handed, from the hip, letting momentum carry death. A hammer doesn't need finesse, he barked, slamming his own into a wooden post until splinters flew. It needs conviction. Splinters showered his shoulders like sparks. Arya drilled archers in the towers, her arrows whistling past gulls. She taught them the secret to killing knights. Aim for islets, armpits, groins. Steel's vulnerable where pride is strongest. They listened, half awed, half afraid of the girl with a wolf's grin. On the 20th night, a horn sounded from the western watchtower. Torchlight revealed sails on the horizon. Black ships trimmed with golden lions, oars churning like centipede legs. The Lannister fleet, smaller than Gendry feared but ample enough to blockade the bay, had come at last. Drums pounded across the water, a heartbeat of impending wrath. Gendry watched from a parapet, hammer across his shoulders, storm wind whipping his cloak. Let them come, he muttered. Lightning flared beyond the ships, turning the horizon white. The sea can swallow iron as quick as fire. Davos, beside him, drew his hood tight. Pray the mother sends calm seas, lad, else their engines will breach us. Gendry's gaze lingered on the foe, but his mind wandered to the forges glowing in the bailey below. He had ordered strange engines crafted, tubular barrels of hammered steel lined with pitch and laced with wildfire stolen from a cache beneath King's Landing. At dusk, the smiths had mounted them on swiveling frames atop the curtain walls, untested and half-mad. An alchemist from the Guild of Pyromancers, half-blind and shaking, swore they would spew green fire across the waves if primed with flame and faith. Gendry trusted steel more than sorcery, yet Storm's End needed every devil's trick. He wrapped a gauntlet on the stone. Tonight we temper iron with dragon flame. Ser Timon will not expect wildfire. Davos crossed himself. Nor the dragons, for that matter. No dragons answer to me, Gendry said, but I'll forge my own. Lightning flashed again, illuminating Arya crouched atop a merlin, hair plastered to her cheeks, eyes wild with anticipation. Their gazes met across the gale. She raised 2 fingers in silent pledge. 2 lives, 2 blades, 1 storm. Morning greeted them with a blood-red dawn. Lannister trebuchets assembled on the beach south of the fortress, throwing shadows like skeletal fingers across the surf. Soldiers in scarlet lined the dune ridges, shields interlocked, banners flapping stiff in the salt breeze. Gendry could almost smell the arrogance. They had come to pluck a bastard's dream as one might crush a crab shell. Within the walls, every forge roared. The smiths quenched glowing arrowheads in barrels of oil, ignited them, and passed them up the winding staircases. The new forged stag banners were raised, antlers crowned with shards of rising sun. Drums thundered within the yard, Baratheon drums, deep and relentless as a hammer beating a blade flat. Gendry donned his armor last, black plate trimmed with gold, fashioned overnight by his own hands. Across the breast he had welded a crowned stag rearing upon a storm. It bore hammer marks where polish should have been, imperfections screaming authenticity. He belted his warhammer, 14 pounds of iron with a spike on the reverse, and descended to the gatehouse. The men gathered by the portcullis parted like wheat for a scythe. Ser Davos, helm tucked beneath his arm, bowed. Arya stood to Gendry's right, slender and lethal, needle echoing moonlight. To his left, Henley the armorer hefted a torch toward the wildfire tubes on the walls. Gendry raised his hammer overhead. "You know me?" he shouted, voice cracking like oak. "Some call me bastard. Some call me blacksmith. Today you may call me Baratheon if you will, or else call me nothing, for names matter less than deeds." A roar answered, raw and untrained yet mighty with hunger. Gendry's grin gleamed like sudden sunrise. "Then follow me, and let the lions learn that stags gore hardest when cornered." The portcullis rattled upward. What followed would be sung in taverns from the Dornish marches to Maidenpool, the Battle of Shipbreaker Bay's second storm. Lannister scorpions launched quarrels fat as spears. Stormlanders loosed arrows dipped in pitch. Wildfire cannon belched emerald death across the surf, setting siege towers ablaze before they touched sand. The sea itself caught fire in patches, burning crimson banners into cinders that floated like black snow. Gendry waded into breakwall skirmishes, hammer pulping iron helms, sending shockwaves through bodies that clanged like brazen bells. Each enemy who met him stared into eyes blazing Robert's wrath reborn. He fought not for glory nor vengeance, but for a forge yet unfed, a dream yet tempered. At his side, Arya moved as a whisper of silver, needle flashing to sever throats, joints, tendons. She leapt across fallen beams, eyes searching always for Gendry, and when she sighted him ringed by foes, she danced through blood-slick sand to guard his flanks. 2 figures, one broad as an ox, the other slender as a reed, turning the tide. By dusk, the beach smoldered with charred wood and twisted iron. Waves hissed over embers that glowed a sickly green, the wildfire's curse lingering long after flame. Lannister horns called retreat at last. Ser Timon, bleeding from a gash across his cheek, spurred his destrier toward the surf, but an arrow, loosed from Lady Ermazon's tallest tower, speared his breast. He fell into the shallows, where the tide dragged him under crimson foam. Gendry watched the sun sink, hammerhead resting on the sand beside his boot, each breath rattling through his chest like bellows. The water lapped at his greaves, swirling with ash and blood. Storm's End still stood, its walls scorched, but its heart unbroken. He lifted his gaze to the keep. The forge fires burned bright atop the curtain walls, pillars of smoke rising like braziers for the gods. Behind him, soldiers knelt in clusters, binding wounds. Others gazed at their new lord, faces streaked with soot and salt tears. Davos limped across the wreckage, one arm strung in bloody bandages. "It's done," he rasped. "They'll think twice before sailing again." Gendry stared beyond the bay, where charred masts bobbed like blackened ribs. "They'll come a third time," he said. "Lions are stubborn beasts. Then we'll forge a sharper hammer," Arya whispered, appearing at his shoulder. He turned to her, expression unreadable beneath streaks of grime. "Will you stay?" he asked. She looked to the river of smoke curling above the keep, then to the dark horizon. "For a while," she said at last, voice as soft as spring rain. "Until the fire in you burns steady." He nodded, unspeaking. That night Storm's End feasted upon bread and onion broth thickened with wine. They lacked meat, but hunger mattered less than victory. Bards strummed cracked lutes, singing half-finished verses of the bastard of Storm's hammer. The wolf girl who guards the forge, the onion knight, returned. Mothers pressed babes to Gendry's gauntlets, begging blessings in Robert's name. He granted them with shy awkwardness, still more smith than sovereign. Yet as the moons wheeled overhead and the fires banked low, Gendry strode to the smithy one last time. Alone beneath the anvil's shadow, he placed a hoofed ingot upon the coals. Sparks burst skyward. With slow, deliberate strokes he hammered the metal, shaping it into a circlet of blunt antlers. No gold, no jewels, only dark storm steel polished to a midnight sheen. When dawn came he quenched it in seawater, and the hiss matched the sigh of his heart. He did not place the circlet upon his brow. Instead he set it upon the high table of the great hall, where any who dared could behold it. The crown of a Baratheon reborn would wait for a worthier season, a time when the realm accepted the hammer's song. Until then he would be as his father once was, a lord of storm and fury, forging a dynasty not by decree but by deed. And in the hush before sunrise, as gulls cried beyond rain-lashed ramparts and the winds began to turn inland, Gendry felt the anvil beneath his soul glowing red-hot with purpose. Storm's End was awake, and so was he. Dawn bled pale gold across the sky, and with it came the heavy scent of charred wood drifting over Shipbreaker Bay. The tide carried wreckage ashore, split planks scorched green by wildfire, a half-melted lion's head of brass, scraps of crimson cloth clinging to barnacled timbers. Gendry watched from the wind-gouged parapet, shoulders raw where plate had rubbed flesh, every breath an ember in his ribs. The castle below murmured like a waking beast, smiths rekindling forges, maesters counting arrow shafts, children scavenging driftwood for cooking fires. Victory, he discovered, was little more than another chore before midday. He descended to the yard, where plumes of coal smoke met the briny air. Sparks hissed around hammers already ringing upon anvils. Henley the armorer raised a gauntlet in greeting. "We'll have 80 spearheads before noon, lord." He called above the din, "Blades enough to gut a kraken, if it shows its beak." "See that you do," Gendry said, though one corner of his mouth curved. He made for the great hall, boots crushing shards of broken coral heads. At the doors Arya waited, cloak flapping like a gray banner, her hair, unbound, tangled about her face, and there were fresh bruises where helmet straps had bitten skin. They shared a long glance, relief, exhaustion, gratitude all tangled. Then she turned on a heel and strode beside him without word. Inside, the long tables bristled with Stormlander captains hunched over trenchers of stewed barley. Lord Penrose sat nearest the dais, left arm splinted, face gray with pain yet bright-eyed. Lady Ermazond and 2 of her Mistwood archers whispered over parchment. Davos stood at the high table, quill poised above a map weighed by stones of smooth granite. Gendry took the stag throne. No crown rested there, only the storm steel circlet dark against the oaken grain. He let it lie untouched. "Tell me the count." Penrose spoke first. 28 dead, 43 wounded bad enough to slow them a fortnight, another 60 nicked or bruised. Stores hold for 2 moons if we stretch rations. The alchemist's wildfire stocks are drained, and we cracked 2 of the iron tubes. Cracked? Gendry's brow nodded. Henley had followed him in, wiping soot on a rag. "A mite thin near the vents," he said. "I'll cast thicker girth bands, but we need more pig iron. We can bargain for or from Tarth," Davos offered, tapping the map. "Lady Brienne's garrison there owes fealty to no lion. If the sapphire I'll still flies the stag," Arya muttered. Gendry studied the lines of coast and current. "Send ravens," he decided. "Offer half our next haul of Dornish wine for every ton of or they deliver. And parchment for the maesters. Storm's End will pay in forged steel, better than silver." Davos nodded, scribbling. The hall's doors groaned. A squire rushed in, cheeks flushed. "A delegation at the gate, M-Lord. Banner of green and gold." The Tyrell rose. Murmurs rippled. Tyrells had knelt to dragons, yet their ambitions bloomed faster than weeds in spring. Gendry exchanged a glance with Davos. "Show them guessed right," he said, "but keep archers on the ramparts." They received the Tyrell envoy in the small audience chamber overlooking the bay. 3 knights arrayed in polished steel. Ser Garland the gallant foremost, handsome as the songs, flanked by a lean cousin and a nervous scribe. Garland bowed with exquisite grace. "Lord Gendry Baratheon," he said, voice warm as high summer. "The Reach congratulates Storm's End on repelling lions from her shore." Gendry, still grime-flecked, inclined his head. "Your roses bloom swift upon blood. A prudent gardener knows when rain will follow thunder." Garland smiled. "Queen Daenerys means to pardon all houses that aided Cersei, provided they bend the knee before her dragons wing north." He paused, dark eyes sweeping Arya, Davos, Penrose. "The Reach would rather see a stag stand proud beside the rose than be trampled beneath a lion's paw." "And what price for your fellowship?" Garland folded hands. "First, full trade between Storm's End and Highgarden, grain and wine southbound, ironworks north. Second, recognition of Lady Eleanor Tyrell, my niece, as ward of your house, educated beneath your tutelage until her marriageable years." Penrose scoffed. "A hostage in all but name." Garland's look held only patience. "A pledge. We ward for Renly once, Baratheon and Tyrell together. Let us honor that memory." Gendry wrestled a snort. He recalled knights in green cloaks sneering at the bastard farrier in King's Landing. Yet he also remembered tales of Renly's camp, bright with laughter and music. Heaven to small folk crushed beneath Stannis' taxes. Alliance was iron. Strike too hot, it warped. Too cold, it shattered. He leaned back. "We'll host your Lady Eleanor a season," he said slowly. "If she finds Storm's End suits her temperament, we'll speak again come spring." Relief flickered behind Garland's eyes. "The Reach bows to your generosity." Arya's whisper brushed Gendry's ear later, as servants poured wine for their guests. "You barter futures like suits of chainmail." "I barter peace," he murmured, "and chainmail keeps hearts from spilling." That night, beneath storm lanterns strung along the yard, Gendry oversaw a lesson unlike any the castle had known. Smiths rolled barrels of glowing charcoal onto the cobbles. Apprentices lugged anvils and sledges. Around each forge, a dozen squires and peasants gathered, wide-eyed. Gendry mounted a crate, shirtless, muscles gleaming copper in the firelight. "Every man here must learn the hammer," he declared, voice booming between towers. "If you can shape iron, you can shape your own destiny." He hefted a raw bar of pig iron with tongs, slid it into the coals. Sparks leapt. "Watch the color," he instructed. "Dull red, and the metal laughs at your blows." Bright orange, it listens. Yellow, it obeys. When the bar glowed sunbright, he laid it upon the anvil, raised his hammer, and struck. The ring silenced gossip and doubt alike. He flattened one end, drew it out, turned it, upended it. "Seek's blade," he said when the shape emerged. Short, fast, easy to wield in a press. He quenched it with a hiss. Then he handed the hammer to a freckled boy scarcely 12. "Your turn." The lad swallowed. Gloves swallowed his thin wrists. The hammer's haft looked as long as his arm. Yet he swung, awkward, offbeat, and iron sang anyway. Others followed. Soon a chorus of clanging filled the yard, sparks spinning into the star-flecked void. Arya perched on a rampart above, feet dangling, smile unseen yet felt. If wolves could purr, the sound would match the low rumble of her approval. Davos joined her. "You trust flames to teach them quicker than swords?" "They need more than swords," she said. "They need purpose. The hammer gives that." Davos glanced down. Gendry circled the forges, correcting posture, praising effort, laughing when a spark singed his brow. The men watched him as children watch an elder brother, all awe and relief. "Purpose indeed," Davos murmured. "May the smith keep him whole." Ravens arrived thrice before the next moon. The first bore parchment from Tarth. Lady Brienne pledged or shipments once a fortnight and offered 200 men-at-arms under Ser Hyle Hunt. The second came from Golden Grove, peak bannermen promising allegiance if Gendry swore to defend their orchards against lion raids. The third was from Dorne, sealed in orange wax with a sun and spear. Prince Quentyn Martell sought trade in storm-forged spearheads, hinting at mutual disdain for Lannister power. Alliances sprouted like seedlings bursting through charred earth. But along with alliances came tidings darker. One dawn a battered fisherman staggered into the yard, eyes bloodshot, tunic glued to ribs with drying gore. He knelt before Penrose and spilled a tale of black sails shadowing the Rainwood coast, reavers bearing Kraken standards burning hamlets. But the men upon those decks wore no iron-born beards. They spoke the western tongue of Casterly Rock. Lannisters, it seemed, bought salt captains to raid by proxy, choking storms and of food. Gendry assembled his council in the map room. Candles guttered in the dawn breeze. "We cannot guard every spit of shore," Davos said, tracing coves with his maimed fingers. "But we can bleed them when they land. Or hunt them before," Arya offered, eyes glinting. "Give me 20 men and a fast galley. We'll slip among the islands after dusk, cut throats, scuttle hulls." Penrose frowned. "A lady leading a night raid?" "A Stark," she corrected. "Starks are wolves. Wolves hunt." Gendry studied her, heart clenching. Each battle drew them closer to the edge where life tumbles into legend. But a smith who fears sparks never shapes steel. He nodded. "Take 30, not 20, and choose those who know silence." Davos grunted. "I'll captain the galley."
Ive sailed darker waters.
Gendry clasped his shoulder. "You're needed here. A ship's captain with no ship grows rusty," Davos replied. "Grant an old smuggler one more tide." So it was decided. At twilight, Arya and Davos led 30 knife-quiet Stormlanders down the postern stair, past waves frothing pink under the setting sun. Gendry met them at the dock. Arya tightened her cloak clasp. "I'll bring you trophies," she said. "Bring yourself back instead." She smirked. "Greedy." He caught her hand, calloused fingers fitting his like iron in iron. Words hovered unsaid. Then she slipped aboard. Sails unfurled, pale wings in the gloaming. The galley vanished between sea and sky, leaving only ripples and memory. That night the castle felt hollow. Gendry walked the empty forges, watching coals fade from white to bruised purple. Without sparks, the yard was a graveyard of anvils. He climbed the highest tower, where wind screamed like a dying beast. Far to the east, tiny orange flares winked against the horizon, villages burning. He clenched the parapet until stone cut skin. Storm's End was a hammer, yes, but hammers alone do not rebuild kingdoms. You need hands, hearts, hope. He whispered a prayer to the smith for Arya's safe return. then to the stranger for her enemy's swift passing, and at last to no god at all, trusting only the forge of fate. 3 nights later thunderheads bruised the stars. Lightning forked behind ragged clouds, but no rain came. From the maester's rookery Gendry saw a lone lantern bobbing seaward, half a league out. A horn moaned from the western wall. He ran for the yard, half-dressed, hammer in hand. Guards spilled from barracks. Penrose barked orders. The portcullis groaned upward. The galley limped through breakers, sail torn, prow scorched. When it reached the quay, Davos stood at the bow, face streaked, cloak missing. Behind him Arya stepped out of shadow, hair plastered, tunic soaked crimson. She leapt to the pilings, dragging a burlap sack. Gendry sprinted down the ramp as she staggered beneath its weight. She dropped the sack. It clanged with metal. "Helms!" she gasped, chest heaving. "Lion helms. 23. Blood trickled from a slice along her jaw. Gendry caught her elbow. Inside, Maester's salves. Later, she pointed seaward as if conjuring ghosts. "We burned 5 ships at anchor. Davos sank 2 more with pitch barrels. Their fleets crippled. And the cost?" Penrose asked softly. 5 good men," Davos answered, stepping onto the wharf, voice hoarse. "But we left twice that number of lions sleeping beneath the tide." Gendry embraced the smuggler, then Arya. The yard erupted in cheers, fists pounding shields until dawn blushed violet. Yet amid triumph Gendry felt sorrow's iron press, the smith's old lesson. Every blade exacts its due in flesh. Weeks drifted like sea mist, each dawn measuring new burdens. The Tyrell ward arrived, Lady Eleanor, 12, bright-eyed and quick to laugh. She trailed a septa and 3 sworn shields and spent mornings watching Gendry hammer billets beside Henley. At supper she peppered him with questions about balance and quenching. Her admiration served Storm's End well. Reach lords sent barges of grain unasked, and gossip flowed that the rose and the stag might one day share petals. Not all gossip pleased. In the rain-soaked courtyard Gendry sparred with recruits when a raven battered through the downpour, scroll tied tight. Cersei, uncrowned yet undeterred, called him oathbreaker and kinslayer for Tymon's death, though waves had swallowed the man. She vowed a host would march south under Ser Lancel Lannister's banner, with Sellsword companies bought from Pentos. A note scrawled beneath, in smaller hand, read, "Burn before reading." He recognized Qyburn's spidery script, poison hidden within threat. Gendry burned the parchment, but ash could not erase truth. War would swell again, greater, uglier, and dragons might shadow its wings if Daenerys chose to test his rise. The Stormlands alone were an anvil. He needed a hammer arm to swing against the world. Alliances of coin and courtesy were kindling. He required living flame. That evening he convened council in the armory, anvils serving as seats. "We must forge a realm, not a redoubt," he said. "Penrose, ride to Nightsong, to Crow's Nest, to Black Haven. Promise titles, lands, whatever wins hearts. Davos, sail for Sunspear. Offer Martell a share of Stepstone's plunder when the war is done." "Arya, I'm not leaving," she cut in. He met her eyes. "Then stand at my side when I ride north." "North? Winterfell," he said. "If I kneel to Sansa Stark as queen in the north, we gain her levy, Jon Snow's renown, and the loyalty of every bannerman who remembers Robert and Eddard's brotherhood." Penrose exhaled through teeth. "A bold stroke. If they accept you." "They will," Arya said quietly. "My sister honors strength and loyalty. Show both, and she'll clasp your hand." Davos frowned. "The road is long, and lion scouts roam the Trident." "Then we ride with 80 knights only," Gendry said. "Fast, silent. Carry Baratheon colors and northern grey equally. Storm's End must trust Lady Ermazond and Ser Henley to hold the walls till we return." Henley grunted. "We'll keep the forge lit." So the plan was cast. Within 2 days Gendry rode through the gatehouse at dawn astride a dappled courser, hammer slung across his back, antler sigil painted upon his shield. Arya rode Ghost's Bane, a pale gray mare swift as rumor. Davos, clad again in rough sailor's garb, served as wayfinder despite aching bones. 80 Stormlander knights followed, their helms crowned with stag horns newly forged from scavenged scrap. They took the King's Road north, skirts of the Blackwater rush glimmering to their right. Burnt villages dotted the horizon where Cersei's foragers had scoured. Peasants halted plows to stare. Some cheered, recognizing Robert's long-dead swagger in Gendry's bearing. Others knelt, fear and hope mingling like sweat and rain. Arya counted banners flapping from half-ruined holdfasts. Ragged crows, faded cranes, a patched fish, river lords hedging bets as tides turned. At Maidenpool they paused to water horses. The town square stank of spilled tar from Lannister torchings. A septon, robe singed, blessed Gendry with trembling fingers. "The mother guides your hand," he whispered, "and the warrior tempers your steel." Gendry slipped the man a stag of silver, strange reversal for a blacksmith who once stole crusts of bread in Flea Bottom. Beyond the neck they rode through damp heather where mists clung low. Arya's face changed. Lines of worry melted into softness as northern winds stroked her cheeks. She pointed toward distant ridges. "Last hearth," she murmured. "Umberland. They may fly Bolton-flayed man still, but their hearts were born roaring. They did not tarry to test it. 5 days from Winterfell a blizzard ambushed them. Snowflakes thick as ash choking breath, drifts swallowing hooves. They pressed on, blinded, guided by Davos's instinct and Arya's wolf sense. One night sleet iced tents. Gendry stoked a pit fire, hammered iron rivets while knights huddled beneath firs. Sparks hissed against falling snow, tiny suns dying in winter's dark. Arya knelt beside him, fingers extended to catch warmth. "You chase crowns into storms," she said softly. "Storms chase me," he answered. She studied his profile, the soot scar along his cheekbone, the copper flecks in his winter blue eyes. "When this war ends," she whispered, "where will you stand?" "On the battlements of Storm's End," he said, "with a forge roaring at my back and the sea before me." "And beside you?" His hammer paused mid-stroke. He met her gaze, unflinching. "If the wolf wishes, the stag will share his keep." She said nothing, but her smile warmed the snow between them. Winterfell appeared at last through curtains of swirling white, ramparts thick as mountains, great towers smoking, the godswood's skeletal branches clawing for sky. Direwolf banners snapped from parapets. Gendry's heart thundered. A drum echoing Robert's long ago ride to meet his friend Ned. History circled back upon itself, but with new actors at the stage. At the gate they were met by a guard in gray wool. He eyed the crowned stag upon Gendry's breastplate and Arya's wolf pin glinting on her collar. Without word he signaled. Portcullises rattled. Warm steam gusted from within, scented with wood smoke and roast mutton. They dismounted in the snowy yard. Sansa Stark descended the steps of the great hall, cloak of snowy ermine trailing. Her poise was ice and moonlight, her eyes summer blue. Beside her stood Jon Snow. Taller, broader than songs, black curls dusted white, Longclaw at his hip. Ghost padded near, red eyes glinting. Arya bounded forward. Sansa enfolded her sister, faces pressed, memories bridging years. Jon clasped her forearm, then turned to Gendry. "You've come far, Smith," he said, voice gravel and midnight. "What forges this alliance?" Gendry sank to one knee, helmet removed. "I was born in King's Landing's filth, but I bear Baratheon blood. I hold Storm's End by right of conquest and loyalty alike. I kneel to the North, if the North will stand with me against Lannister tyranny." Snowflakes settled on his dark hair. Silence pulsed. Then Sansa spoke, voice measured yet tinged with warmth. "Rise, Lord Gendry Baratheon of Storm's End. The North remembers Robert's friendship, remembers Ned's honor. If your hammer rings true, we shall answer its call." Jon offered his hand. Gendry took it. "Winterfell stands," Jon said, "and so shall Storm's End, shoulder to shoulder." In that handshake the realm shifted, fault lines realigning beneath snow and sand. A new Baratheon dynasty gained northern sinew. The north gained a forge of unbreakable steel. Moonless night. In Winterfell's crypts the statues of Stark kings loomed, candles guttering at their feet. Gendry followed Arya through the shadows. She halted before Lyanna Stark's effigy, Ston. The petals of winter roses clutched in frozen fingers. "My aunt died for Robert's dream," Arya said, "and Robert died for his own ghosts. Promise me you won't chase phantoms." "I forge dreams," he said. "Phantoms pass through iron." She turned. Beneath the flicker of torches, her eyes were twin embers. "When the snows melt and the dead creep back to memory, will you still choose storms over calm seas?" He brushed knuckles along her cheek. "I choose the anvil that shapes my heart. It beats hardest when you stand near." She caught his hand, squeezed, then stepped back, cheeks flushed. "We ride at first light. Sansa will send 2,000 spears and 100 archers. Jon leads half to the trident. The rest march south with us." Gendry exhaled, heavy with gratitude and dread. "The storm grows," he murmured. "Then let's meet it head-on." They rode south beneath banners of silver direwolf and black stag entwined. Snow gave way to muddy thaw, then to budding fields where crocuses defied late frost. Rumor raced ahead. The bastard Baratheon rides with the Wolf King. Small folk blessed crossroads shrines with iron nails hammered into wooden posts, offerings to the smith and the stranger both. At Harrenhal they paused to water mounts. The castle's melted towers glistened like candle wax. A gaunt woman in mager black welcomed them, claiming neutrality. But spies nestled in every nunnery. Ravens would carry word to King's Landing before sundown. Gendry allowed it. Let lions tremble at allied thunder. On the march Arya and Jon sparred daily, blades clashing like brothers' laughs. Gendry watched, marveling at their fluid grace, the direwolf's dance. Sansa advised from a padded wagon serving as council chamber, conferring with Davos on supply lines. Gendry, unused to parchment's tyranny, forced himself to learn tallies. How many bushels feed 100 mouths? How many nails shoe 100 steeds? Leadership, he realized, was a forge more taxing than war. One dusk, as campfires winked along the tumblestone, a scout galloped in. Lannister hosts sighted east of Pink Maiden, banners of red and gold, griffins of Connington among them. Perhaps 12,000 foot, 3,000 horse, Sellswords among them. Gendry gathered commanders in the command tent, lamplight cave of canvas. He spread charcoal on stained maps. "We hold the ford," he said. "Pin them against the river and let northern archers shred their flanks." Sansa leaned over his shoulder, red hair catching lantern glow. "They'll expect that." He met her gaze. "So we give them what they expect, only faster." Jon tapped Pink Maiden's mark. "I'll ride through the night, circle east, and strike their baggage train at dawn. Direwolves love lamb when shepherds sleep." Gendry clasped his forearm. "Ride light." Arya smirked. "He always does." Blizzards of excitement whirled in the tent. Plans set, scouts dispatched, men oiled sword edges. Gendry dismissed them, lingered alone with Sansa. She watched him pack maps away. "You wear command well," she said. "The armor creaks." He flexed stiff shoulders. "It will fit." She laid a hand on his gauntlet. "My sister trusts few. She trusts you." He blushed beneath soot. "Trust is tempered, like steel." Her lips curved. "Then keep tempering." Night swallowed the camp. Gendry prowled the picket lines, listening for tremor of hooves, sigh of arrows. Sky shimmered with stars, but his mind churned with hammer blows yet to fall. Returning to his tent, he found Arya waiting inside, hood lowered, shadows limning her sharp cheekbones. "Jon's gone," she said softly. "Said to tell you, no fear, only fury. He'll need both." Gendry unbuckled pauldrons, arms aching. "How's your jaw?" "Healing." She touched the faint scar. "A reminder." Lion's scratch. He sank onto a stool, boots muddy. "Tomorrow we cross steel again. If Lannisters break us, storms end falls. The north turns. The realm slides back into chaos. Then we don't break. She crouched, eyes level with his. You are Robert's blood, but you're not Robert. You're stronger where he was brittle, sober where he was drunk on dreams. I'm still half smith, half bastard. So, swords remember the fires that birthed them. She drew needle, laid its thin blade across her palms. Promise me something. Anything. When the war ends, build me a blade of Valyrian steel. Wolf on one side, stag on the other. He swallowed. I'll need dragon fire to shape Valyrian. She smiled like moonrise over frost. Then win a dragon. Their laughter mingled with crickets until a horn's low note drifted from the river. Scouts returning. Duty called. They parted at the tent flap. No kiss, only foreheads brushing, silent vow sealed by breath. Dawn crested in blood-orange splendor. The ford's grassy banks teemed. Stormlander men-at-arms bracing pikes. Northern longbowmen stringing you. Baratheon knights forming cinched wedges. Across the tumblestone, lion banners rippled, massed shield walls shimmering in morning haze. Trumpets shrilled, drums pounded. Gendry rode Ironhoof, hammer resting across pommel, antler helm glinting. He raised the stag standard, black cloth whipped by river wind. Stand firm. His roar carried beyond clamor. Hold till the wolves bite. Lannister horns blared. Heavy infantry advanced, red rank upon red. Their first volley of quarrels hissed overhead. Baratheon tower shields locked, arrows thunking wood. Northern bowstrings twanged. Gray-fletched shafts arced, finding chinks. Men screamed, stumbled. Blood darkened grass. At the ford's shallows cavalry splashed forward, Cunnington griffins leading. Gendry spurred. His wedge thundered downhill, hoofbeats drumming earth. Collision cracked like splitting oak. His hammer swung, cratered a gilded helm, momentum rippling through bone. Hilt reversed, spike punched a breastplate. All sense narrowed to bellows breath, iron tang, the wet sound of meat sundered. Around him knights fell, others rose. Baratheon horns called for left flank push. He steered toward the banners. Ahead, a Cunnington knight with plumed helm leveled lance. Gendry angled shield, felt impact jolt shoulder, but lance splintered. He rose in stirrups, hammer overhead, and brought it down upon the knight's gorget, steel shearing spine. Blood fountained. He glimpsed Arya darting among foot ranks, needle flashing. She hamstrung a sergeant, rolled beneath a mace, slit a throat in the same breath. Direwolf grace amid stag fury. Hours blurred. Sun climbed, river ran red. Then, from the enemy rear, snow-cloaked riders burst, pelting baggage wagons aflame. Jon Snow's charge cleaved into Lannister line. Panic rippled. Trumpeters faltered. Gendry thrust hammer skyward. Drive! His men surged. Shields cracked, banners toppled, Cunnington griffins trampled. By late afternoon, clangor ebbed. What Lannisters survived fled north, pursued by wolf riders. Field belonged to stags and direwolves. Gendry dismounted, legs quivering. He looked upon the carnage. Ragged breath, numb fingers. Victory's toll again. Jon rode up, cloak torn, ghost at his heels. They break like ice under spring sun. More will come, Gendry said. Then we'll keep breaking them. Arya staggered over, face blood-splattered but eyes bright. She pressed a trophy into Gendry's palm. A lion-headed cloak brooch bent and cracked. For your collection, she said. He wiped grime from her cheek. My collection's rich enough. She arched a brow. Not yet, it isn't. Nightfall. Camps sprawled among trampled grass. Fires licking at pots of thick stew. Davos tended wounded. Steady hands despite shaking limbs. Sansa drafted letters on Jon's campaign table. Messages for White Harbor, for Gulltown, for Bear Island. Tales of victory, calls for grain and arms. Gendry prowled the perimeter. Past a stand of alder trees, he found a fallen log, sat heavy, stared at the river. Torchlight reflected off dark water like shards of lost stars. His hammer lay across his knees. Blood had dried in runnels along its haft. Footsteps approached. Arya sank beside him, silent a time. "Counting ghosts?" she asked. "Measuring the gap between yesterday's farrier and today's lord." He flexed fingers. "I swing the same hammer, yet cleave men instead of iron." She followed his gaze across ripples. "Steel can build or kill. Blame the hand, not the tool." "My hand," he exhaled. "Will it ever forget the shape of skull beneath steel?" "It shouldn't," she said. "Forgetting invites madness." He turned to her. "You speak like one who knows." "I carry names," she whispered. "But I remember faces too, else those names lose meaning." Wind rustled alder leaves. She offered a flask. He drank beet-sweet Dornish red, cough-warm. Silence lengthened, comfortable as wool. Then he spoke hoarsely. "When this ends, if it ends, will you remain at Storm's End?" The Forge's song is lonelier than battle's roar. She considered the river, the moon, the whisper of distant wolves. "The world is wide," she said at last. "But some keeps are worth returning to." She squeezed his hand. "Don't lose your fire before I come home." He laced fingers with hers. Sparks ignited behind his ribs, gentle, steady, forging new resolve. "I won't," he promised. Letters sped on raven wings. Word of the Tumblestone rout emboldened river lords to hoist stag banners. Bracken, Blackwood, Mallister pledged men. Even Fry offshoots, hungry to shed cursed kinship, sought Baratheon favor. Cersei's host shrank. Sel's words deserting for lack of pay now that crown coffers bled dry. Yet Lannister gold was not her only coin. Whispers told of alliances with Euron's drowned men, of Selsail armadas building at Fair Isle. Storms gathered beyond every horizon. Gendry's host swung southeast toward the King's Road again, gathering grain, drilling new recruits. 2 moons passed. Autumn tinged leaves gold. Along the march, Gendry personally tempered 100 spearheads each fortnight, stamping crowned stags upon sockets, symbol and promise. Smiths in every bivouac copied his methods, so that the ringing of hammers became the anthem of the campaign. One evening Sansa presented sealed parchment trimmed in silver. "From Lady Eleanor," she said. "She reports Storm's End holds fast. Tyrell grain flows, Martell spears cross the marches to join Henley. And," she smiled wryly, "the castle kitchens complain of onion surfeit. It seems Davos sent every barrel sunspear gifted." Gendry laughed for the first time in weeks. Relief tasted of wood smoke and autumn apples. Yet before dawn that laughter faded. A raven arrived bearing black wax. Queen Cersei had died. Rumors conflicted. Poisoned wine, shattered mind, dagger by her own hand. But her heir was crowned. King Tommen II of houses Lannister and Baratheon by birth, though under regency of Ser Lancel and the High Septon. The realm teetered anew, one false king replaced by weaker. Gendry gathered commanders at sunrise. "Lannister lions cling to a cub," he told them. "Break the regent's grip, and the cub may roar for us or flee. The Iron Throne herself lies open." Jon folded arms. "Dragons still fly above King's Landing." "Dragons perch with Daenerys," Sansa corrected. "She hunts traitors in the west, rooting remnants of Euron's fleet. The capital stands near defenseless." Arya's eyes flared. "Then strike." Penrose frowned. "March on the city and we overextend. Supply lines fray. Winter closes roads." "Winter has yet to cross the neck," Jon observed. "We have weeks." Gendry weighed the hammer in his palm. A bastard who broke a helm on the trident could now break a throne. But thrones were more fragile than bone. They shattered kingdoms. "We move," he said, "but not to sack. We march to forge peace on the anvil of the Red Keep." Their columns snaked south, banners rippling like a river of night and frost. At the Blackwater Rush's ford they met scant resistance. Half-hearted levies who scattered before the stag-wolf tide. Citizens lined the King's Road, clutching babes, begging bread. Gendry rationed grain carts, posting guards to ensure fair handouts. He ordered a smithy pitched outside every village to mend plows gratis. "A realm fed is a realm ruled," he told a bewildered bailiff. Near the ruins of the field of fire they camped. Night sky shimmered red in memory of dragon flame once unleashed. Scouts brought word. King's Landing's gates closed, but walls manned thinly. Gold cloaks argued over loyalties. Merchants prayed for order. Tommen's regent Ser Lancel refused parley, trusting in city defenses and divine decree. Gendry convened war council within a pavilion lit by forge braziers. "We cannot storm blindly," he said. "Small folk will die first." "Then take the city without storm," Sansa suggested. "Open its gates from within." "How?" Penrose asked. Arya answered, voice low. "Through the guttering under the Dragon Pit Hill. I slipped in once as a girl chasing cats. The tunnel still reeks of refuse. The gold cloaks shun the filth." Jon raised a brow. "Can you guide a dozen?" "A score." Gendry nodded slowly. "Once the gates open, our host rides swift, secures the Red Keep.
No sack, no fires.
We seize the regent, present the boy king with choices. Kneel to a Baratheon forged by storm and northern steel, or keep a broken throne alone." "And if Daenerys returns with dragons?" Davos asked. "Then we show her a kingdom united beneath justice, not fear. Dragons crave home. Give them one." Silence warmed to determination. Plans etched. Arya gathered her chosen. Men nimble and ruthless. Faceless backgrounds, orphan boldness. She donned rough-spun, smeared soot upon cheeks. Before she left, she found Gendry by his anvil, shaping a small dagger for Lady Eleanor's upcoming name day. Sparks painted his brow gold. She touched his elbow. "Think of me when the hammer sings." "It sings only for you," he said. She kissed him, quick, fierce, tasting iron and hope. Then she vanished into lantern dark. 3 nights crawled past. Gendry stood each dusk atop the siege camp's watchtower, scanning city lights. On the 3rd, torches flickered along the mud gate. Then flames blossomed into shapes. Stag antlers traced by burning pitch on the gate's inner planks. A signal. Horns brayed. He swung into Ironhoof's saddle. Knights formed wedges. Dirt pounded. The host poured toward walls where portcullis groaned upward. Inside, streets echoing with panic, gold cloaks dropped weapons at sight of charging stag banners flanked by direwolves. Citizens screamed, then cheered as soldiers directed them off the thoroughfares. Bloodshed was sparse. A handful of zealot sparrows resisted, cut down by northern pikes. At the Red Keep's foot, Lannister guards rallied before Maegor's holdfast, but Jon's vanguard smashed ranks, forcing surrender. Gendry dismounted at the throne room's doors, hammer in fist. Marble floor echoed beneath boot. Flames guttered in wall sconces. Shadows danced upon the iron throne, jagged, cruel, empty. Ser Lancel knelt upon steps, sword discarded, white cloak stained. Beside him a boy of 13 clutched a gilded crown too large for his brow. Tommen too, eyes wide and wet. Gendry approached slowly, helm under arm. He halted 2 paces below the dais. "King Tommen," he said, voice resonant. "I am Gendry Baratheon, son of Robert of the House Baratheon. This throne forged our family's rule, but it has cut deep those unworthy to wield its power. Will you share its burden under a regency guided by steel and justice, or yield it until you are of age to rule a kingdom healed?" The boy's gaze flicked to toppled crown, then to Lancel, trembling. He swallowed. I want peace." Gendry knelt, met Tommen's eye level. "Peace begins with choice. Choose your realm, not your name." Tears trickled down pale cheeks. "I choose Storm's End," he whispered. "And Winterfell too, if they'll have me." A hush fell. The throne room's iron jaws seemed to unclench. Gendry rose, turned to assembled lords, gold cloaks, maids peering from galleries. "Bear witness," he declared. "A new dawn rises, a forge of storm and snow melding iron and ice." Then the doors burst wider. Arya strode in, cloak dripping sewer filth, face smeared yet alight. She raised a bloody sack, Lancel's high septon mitre torn. "One gatekeeper less," she said. Gendry met her smile with thunder in his chest. The hammer's song swelled, echoing off scorched rafters, promising a dynasty tempered not by conquest alone, but by unity of metal and marrow. Outside, first light touched the city's rooftops, and for the first time in living memory, King's Landing awoke to the clang of hammers beating not plowshares into swords, but swords into something new, shields wide enough to shelter a realm, an empire of storms reforged beneath wolf-guarded skies. The sun climbed over Blackwater Bay, painting the shattered rooftops of King's Landing with molten splashes of gold. Yet the city inhaled each breath as if expecting flame to follow light. Bells told the hour, slow and tentative, their voices still half-choked by the smoke of the brief struggle. Women dragged buckets from well to doorstep, scrubbing alley gore with lye water. Gold cloaks, newly sworn beneath direwolf stag standards sewn overnight, hauled corpses to the common gate for pyres. Above it all, ravens wheeled in curious spirals, quills black as the Iron Throne now standing mute in its hall. Gendry Baratheon scarcely slept. Dawn found him at the forge yard below the Red Keep, sleeves rolled to the elbow, shaping rivets from thick wrought iron. Sparks leapt across his breastplate as if eager to finish what battle had begun. Nearby 3 apprentice smiths hammered will spokes for refugee carts, their rhythm guided by his nod. He had decreed no Lord's Council would convene until the city's ovens relit, its sewers cleared, its water cisterns purified. Power, he told Penrose, meant mending the hinge pins before mending crowns. Yet Power's court came calling regardless. By mid-morning the outer bailey filled with petitioners, Guildmaster Tobo Mott demanding privileges for master craftsmen. High Septon Tarwick of the Faith redeemed begging permission to preach from the September of Baelor's scorched steps. A gaunt envoy from the Iron Bank of Bravos rattling promissory scrolls like shackles. Davos received them beneath an awning hung with fresh canvas, quill-scratching promises lean enough not to bankrupt hope. Within the Maiden Vault Sansa Stark opened a makeshift audience chamber ringed by northern guards. She heard grievances from potters whose kills were commandeered for wildfire, from fishmongers whose nets were seized by starving garrison men, from a tear-streaked seamstress whose daughter vanished the night the Lion Regent fled. Sansa catalogued each tale with the calm, sure hand of a woman who had survived Lannister courts, Bolton knives, and the siege of winter itself. Where coin sufficed, she paid it from the Tyrell coffers Garland had forwarded at dawn. Where justice cried louder, she dispatched Hooded Nab, a former alchemist's guild underclerk, now sworn as King Tommen's master of whisperers, to ferret answers from dark corners. Jon Snow, meanwhile, rode patrol along the Rose Road, scattering lingering cells words like crows from carrion. Ghost loped at his stirrup, crimson eyes feral beneath the bright sun. Northern outriders strung Connington men from tree limbs when they refused quarter, and Jon did not look away. His mercy reserved for those who surrendered blades as well as pride. Only Arya vanished. At sunrise, she slipped through a sally door in the keep's undercroft, needle at hip, a black scarf smothering the stark silver at her throat. Gendry glimpsed her shadow passing along T. He barbicaned but forbore to call out. Some hunts required silence even from those who loved the hunter. He discovered her that evening on the roof of the ruined Tower of the Hand, seated cross-legged upon cracked lead tiles, telescoping spyglass to eye. Wind snapped her gray cloak, sending ribbons of hair whipping. She did not turn when he trod up the narrow stair. "Dragons," she said, offering the glass. Through the brass barrel he caught a distant glint above the sunset. A charcoal smear moving against bronze sky, wings mottled flame and shadow. Another circling far behind, larger, tail cording like a lash. No third silhouette. "Only 2, he murmured. "Regal fell over the honey wine. Word says," Arya replied. And Viserion vanished a moon past, chasing Euron's manticore ship beyond the stepstones. "They say the sea swallowed them both." He lowered the glass. "Daenerys will mourn a headless family as we mourn fractured kingdoms. Grief makes poor counsel." Arya angled him a wry glance. "So does vengeance." He brushed soot from her cheek. "I chase neither. I forge what's left." Lightning flickered far west, a silent pulse heralding storms. He felt it in his bones, the churn of histories converging upon the capital like molten or funneled toward a mold. The question was whether the mold could hold. Gendry convened a night council beneath the broken chandeliers of the Queen's ballroom, lanterns replacing crystals, benches replacing velvet thrones. Present were Sansa, Jon, Davos, Lord Penrose, Lady Ermazond, arrived with Henley after a 10-day forced march, and young King Tommen too, who perched upon a tall-backed chair, legs swinging nervously. Behind Tommen stood Ser Hyle Hunt and Brienne of Tarth, newly installed as Lord Commander of the King's Guard by common acclaim. Her white cloak unembroidered, her greatsword Oathkeeper glimmering like pale sunrise. Gendry opened with a Smith's straightforwardness. "We hold the city, but we do not yet rule. The realm obeys the hammer only until the hand falters. We must fashion a lawful bond." Sansa spread parchment on the table, a charter drafted with Maester Walgrave's careful script. "A regency compact," she explained. "Tommen retains the crown. A council of 9 governs until he reaches 18 summers. No septon loopholes, no regent's decree overriding majority vote." "Who?" Penrose asked. Sansa ticked names. "Gendry Baratheon, Lord Paramount of the Stormlands and Defender of the Realm. Jon Snow, Warden of the North. Myself, Lady of Winterfell and Mistress of Grain. Ser Davos, Hand of Ships and Master of Coin. Brienne of Tarth, Lord Commander. Maester Walgrave, Voice of Lore. Guildmaster Tobo Mott, Voice of the Craftsman. High Septon Tarwick, Voice of the Faith. And Prince Quentyn Martell, Voice of the South." Martell agreed? Jon lifted brows. "His fleet anchors at Driftmark as we speak," Gendry said. "Quentyn seeks trade routes unmolested by Greyjoy reavers. A seat on the council buys safe harbor." "And Tyrell?" Penrose asked. "House Tyrell secures its voice through Guildmaster Mott." Sansa's mouth curved. "Highgarden wants commerce. Commerce wants forging." Davos tapped table. "What of the Dragon Queen?" "As yet unaligned," Sansa allowed. "But a throne steered by charter, not birthright, might interest her more than child's regency. Dragons dislike cages. They respect open sky." King Tommen cleared his throat. "And if her grace burns the charter to ash?" All eyes turned. The boy paled but met Gendry's gaze. Courage flickered behind those wide eyes, seed of a better ruler if properly tended. Gendry knelt before him. "Then we stand together beneath shields of law and steel. A dragon may burn parchment, sire, but it cannot melt honor." Tommen swallowed, nodded. "Let it be written." Quills scratched, wax seals stamped. Thus the Regency Compact was forged. 9 points upon an iron circumference, leaving room for dragons to land if they chose. The Raven arrived 2 nights later in a squall of rain, talons scoring Gendry's window shutter. He untied the scroll, recognized High Valyrian script. "Lord Gendry Baratheon, I return upon Drogon's wings at first dawn. Prepare the throne room. No blades drawn beneath its shadow. Summon the Boy King. Summon Stark and Tyrell and Faith. Blood has waged enough coin. This time we pay in words. Daenerys of House Targaryen." Below the signature, 3 fused circles marked a dragon's footprint stabbed scarlet wax. Gendry read the message to the council at sunrise. Tension wound tight as bowstrings. Penrose counseled stacking scorpions atop the walls. Tobo Mott urged parading smiths and apprentices to evidence industry. Sansa said nothing until debate waned. Then she whispered, "A queen robbed once of her throne will measure every breath for deceit. Offer her no honeyed treacle, only truth." Gendry exhaled. "Truth it shall be." They dressed the throne room with austere dignity. Benches plain oak, carpets swept but threadbare, sconces cleaned of soot.
No flowers, no perfume.
The iron throne itself they left unadorned, its sword still crusted with Lannister blood, lest Daenerys see polish and suspect illusion. Tommen in simple black doublet stood at its foot, Brienne behind with helm off, hair bound. Sansa flanked Gendry to the right, Jon and Davos to the left. High Septon prayed soft at the back. Arya lurked unseen among dusk shadows high upon a broken mezzanine, needle resting across her knees. Just past dawn, while torches yet flickered in the dusty recesses. Wind roared outside, a furnace blast rattling arrow slits. One bronze door groaned inward. Two unsullied strode first, spears vertical, eyes flat. Behind them came a woman in riding leathers dark as smoke. Silver-white braid draped over one shoulder, cloak sewn from night blue lambskin. Drogon's long absence had etched new hollows beneath her cheekbones. Grief-rimmed violet eyes. Yet her stride rang with volcanic authority, as if each step seared footprints into granite. A dragonkin. Gendry inclined his head, not kneeling, not defying. "Your Grace." Daenerys Targaryen surveyed the company. Her gaze paused upon the boy king, the iron throne towering above him like a skeletal leviathan. "The child wears black," she noted, voice neither soft nor hard, simply observant. Tommen's voice shook, but he spoke. "Black for mourning, Your Grace. My mother died of sorrow and sin." A shadow crossed Daenerys' face, gone as quick. She turned to Gendry. "Lord Baratheon, you send ravens proclaiming counsel and charter. Yet one throne stands." She touched a pitted blade on the seat. "Swords of men who knelt by force, not wish." Gendry stepped forward. "We keep the throne until a better seat is forged, one that cannot cut the backs it carries. Will you help shape it?" Jon added quietly, "We know smiths who temper dragon steel." He indicated Gendry's hammer, strapped across back in linen wraps, a gesture of transparency. Daenerys regarded Jon, remembering Dragonstone's battlements, the wind off the narrow sea, the moment she bowed to trust him once. "You arrive at my city with wolves. We arrive with peace," Sansa said, voice ringing clear. "The North offers grain against winter's bite. The Tyrells offer harvest. The Martells, ships. And what do dragons gain?" Daenerys asked, tone sharp but not unkind. "Freedom from fear," Gendry replied. "A throne that need not burn to rule. A council that answers to the realm, not the realm to a single name." Daenerys approached him until a breath space separated hammer-broad chest from slender armor. She looked upward. He stood near a head taller. "Are you Robert's son?" "I am his seed," he said, "but I break his mold." Her gaze flickered along his arms, muscles tempered by forge. "Robert's hammer crushed my brother upon the trident, and my father's crown bled the realm." Gendry's throat tightened. "We are children of broken tools, you and I." Silence stretched, a lengthening wire ready to snap. Then Daenerys raised a hand. Unsullied parted. A small chest was carried forward and set upon flagstones. "Open it," she ordered. Gendry knelt, flipped the latch. Inside lay shards of black glass half melted, edges whispering with rainbow iridescence. Obsidian from Dragonstone's fires, fused anew by dragon flame. He lifted one shard. It hummed cold despite glimmer.
Valyrian slag.
"Dragonfire resurrected dregs of old magic," she said. "Useless alone, yet I believe a skilled smith might fold it into steel." Gendry's pulse thundered. "It may crack iron if quenched too late." "You will not be too late." She stepped back. "Forge your better throne. Seat the boy king upon it until he grows. Let the wolves guard east and north, the roses feed south, the sunspear light west. Dragons shall circle overhead. If this council fails its promise, Drogon and I will smelt it all to slag." Gendry bowed his head. "May the smith guide our hands."
Dane reis met Tommen's kees.
"Rule well, child." Then she turned and strode out. Unsullied followed like wraiths. Outside, Drogon screamed joyous thunder, wings beating wind into the throne room so lanterns guttered. Moments later, only echo remained. Sansa released a breath. "We have a dragon queen as sentinel, not sovereign." Gendry closed the chest. "And we have obsidian to fold into our future." Work began that very night. In the belly of the Street of Steel, Tobomot's grand forge roared brighter than wildfire pits. Gendry oversaw teams of master smiths, Tyroshi bellows men, Cohoric hammers, Dornish tempers, each sworn for coin or honor. They melted obsidian shards within crucibles of wyvern bone powder, stirred molten slurry with rods of star metal scavenged from fallen Bravosi triremes. Layer by layer swords were flattened into ribbons, each ribbon dusted with obsidian sand, folded back upon itself 64 times until black veins marbled silver grain. Sparks hissed midnight blue, singing of ancient empire reborn in humble brick kills. Weeks blurred into moon turns. Gendry slept in snatches, back stiff from stooping, palms blistered anew. Yet every dawn he rode circuits of the city, checking levee crews dredging canals, bricklayers repairing aqueduct arches, bakeries reopened under subsidy. Lady Eleanor Tyrell arrived with a corps of gardeners, converting burned plazas into vegetable beds. Prince Quentin Martell supervised harbor dredges clearing sunken lion galleys. In exchange, the crown granted Dorne tax exemptions on pepper shipments for 10 years. Arya seldom strolled daylight streets, preferring rooftops where wind combed her hair. At midnight, she visited the forge, watching sparks dance. One evening, she carried a small ingot the color of twilight. "From Qohor," she said, "steel fed on goat blood. They claim it drinks moonlight." Gendry laughed, set the ingot with the obsidian stockpile. "We shall see if moonlight cares for dragons." They spoke less of war, more of shaping. How to weld chainmail without flux, how to align fullers for weight balance, how to carve a hilt that fits the human intuition of motion. She listened, occasionally correcting him with a swordswoman's angle. He listened, adjusting tongs to heed her slice of air. Between sparks, their mutual education became courtship, unspoken, inexorable. One dawn she arrived with parchment depicting a dire wolf and stag entwined around a flaming sword. "My design," she said, "for the blade you promised." He brushed aside Bang's damp with forge sweat. "We'll name it Direforge." "Direfire," she corrected, twinkle quick. "Dire Oath," he tried. She shrugged. "We'll know once it's quenched." They shared a grin, atoms colliding. 6 moons after the Dragon Queen's visit, the new throne stood completed, not in the throne room but within the forge. It rose from a base of wrought iron roots braided with weirwood inlay, its back sculpted as a single sweeping arc like a dragon wing embracing whirling leaves. Between each iron rib glimmered polished obsidian, veins twisting as though alive.
No blades juted, no rivet corners freten flesh.
Yet the seat exuded power, quiet, implacable, a promise rather than a threat. Gendry invited the council at high noon. Sunlight shafted through ceiling louvers, striking obsidian to refract prismatic flecks across shadowed walls. Sansa's breath caught. Beauty that humbles. Brienne touched an armrest. Edges filed smooth. Tobo Mott brushed tears from beard. "I have waited all my years to witness such craft." Jon circled, lips pursed. "It will bear weight?" Gendry sat. Metal whispered but did not quake. He stood again and bowed to Tommen. The boy approached. 12 winters now, though worry lines aged him. He rested tentative hand upon armrest, swallowed, then seated himself. The throne accepted him as river accepts pebble. A hush fell. Gendry knelt, presented a short sword with stagwolf pommel. Dire Oath forged with moonsteel and obsidian. Tommen grasped it, blade chiming against scabbard. "I will bear this as ward and witness both." Sansa signaled pages who wheeled the throne on a hidden track down torchlit tunnels, up the great ramp into the throne room. There they placed it upon a raised platform of black marble quarried from dragonstone, a deliberate echo of Targaryen legacy without surrendering to it. When Daenerys next returned, landing Drogon upon the dragon pit's broken dome, she entered the hall to find her ancestor's seat replaced. Instead of fury, a soft wonder touched her gaze. She reached and traced obsidian seams. "It holds sky in stone, and earth in iron," Gendry said. She regarded Tommen. "Will you keep your promise, child of lions?" Tommen straightened. "I will keep the realm, with help of stags, wolves, and dragons." Daenerys nodded once. "Then Drogon will guard the skies of this city, and I will fly west to free new guys from slavers who mock my vow. When I return, I expect this throne to shine brighter, not duller." Gendry offered her a single blade forged of folded obsidian and Valyrian, slender, slightly curved. "Fire song, for your hand." She accepted, hefting it with practiced ease. "It sings indeed," her lips curved, sorrow and hope entwined. "May your counsel remember song." She mounted Drogon, and the dragon's departure rattled every window. Yet the city beneath did not tremble in fear. Children chased its shadow across cobbles, laughing. Winter seeped south regardless of politics. Frost rhymed cypress leaves along the Blackwater, and morning mists congealed like breath into steel sky. Grain levies from the Reach met Dorne's pepper barges at the harbor piers, now overseen by Davos with ledger in hand. He smiled more lines into his weather-cut cheeks than ever before. Honest books, honest coin, a realm afloat upon traded abundance rather than pillage. North of the Trident, Ironborn raids faltered beneath combined Martell galleys and northern longships built at White Harbor. Lord Wyman Manderly sent sweet meat pies stuffed not with lying phrase but with tender boar, spiced and crusted with pastry stags. His letters read, "Only peace tastes thus." In the Vale, Lord Nestor Royce married his heir to a Connington cousin, bridging grudges. Farther west, Garland Tyrell negotiated cessation of Lion hostilities, offering Lannisport trade quotas in exchange for oaths to keep bannermen home. He wrote Sansa, "Commerce binds more tightly than catgut." In the Red Keep's Godswood, a new weirwood sapling sprouted beside the Blackreed Pond, a gift from Bran Stark, carried south by ravens and planted by Arya's own hand. Its bark gleamed ghost-white in moonlight, red leaves unfurling like fresh wounds that promised healing instead of hurt. On the night of the first frost, Gendry finally presented the sword they christened Direforge. Its fuller shimmered translucent. Under lanterns the blade seemed to breathe. He led Arya to the tower of the hand balcony, wind cutting but stars bright. Below, the city lights glimmered in constellations of hearth and forge. He knelt, offered the sword across palms. "A weapon for the wolf who guards the forge." She accepted, fingertips brushing his knuckles. "And what guards the wolf?" He rose, drew a second blade from his belt, its twin shorter by a handspan. He sheathed it at her hip. "The stag's heart." She smiled, eyes bright as frost. "When I roam, this will sing me home." He shifted closer, breath pluming between them. "Roam long." "Not tonight," she said. They kissed, gentle as Smith's first tap on molten steel, firm as the finishing strike. Stars wheeled unheard. Spring tiptoed within winter's skirts. Wildflowers pushed through ashes outside the city walls. Small folk planted vegetable rows beside brick kilns. A festival of rebirth crowned the first full moon. Puppeteers reenacted the day the new throne rolled in. Bakers sold stag-shaped cakes dusted with sugar. Blacksmiths gave out nail-head charms hammered from leftover obsidian, said to ward deceit. Gendry wandered the crowd in plain jerkin, Arya dogging his steps. Children tugged his sleeves for copper tokens minted with the smith's hammer on one face, direwolf and stag entwined on the other. Currency Davos had commissioned to replace Lannister gold lions. Gendry flipped coins into eager palms. One red-haired girl asked if the big man would beat her father's plowshare into a mirror. His mother laughed, wiping flour from brow, saying mirrors come after harvest. Toward dusk, they climbed Aegon's high hill. The Red Keep's new banner fluttered overhead. Black field quartered by silver diagonal. Upper Canton boar crowned stag, lower boar leaping direwolf. Opposite quarters displayed a sun and spear and a golden rose. Above all, a red three-headed dragon sword, unseen yet ever-present. Unity stitched in cloth. Gendry paused before the tower door. "I never thanked you," he said. "For what?" "For teaching a hammer to see past iron." Arya's lips curved. "And I never thanked you for showing a blade patience." They entered the council chamber. Sansa sat at the oblong table, quill poised above parchment outlining harvest tithes. Jon leaned over her shoulder offering scribbled corrections. Davos counted gemstones newly arrived from Sunspear. Brienne polished Oathkeeper's pommel while listening to Penrose recite shipping timetables. Tobo Mott sipped mead, wistfully eyeing Gendry's sooty hands. No one glanced up twice at the pair. Their presence belonged, as smoke belongs above forge. Gendry took his seat, Arya perched on bench behind. Candlelight glinted off dire forge leaning against wall. Sansa cleared her throat. Next agenda, outreach to the Citadel regarding Maester allocation. Lord Gendry, you wish to propose something? He nodded, spreading a blueprint drawn by Henley. A school of craft beside the dragon pit, open to any child with calloused palms and bright eyes. The realm's strength lies not in crowns but in hands, he said. Let's teach them to shape more than war. Silence followed, contemplative. Jon smiled slow. Davos tapped table, approving. Brienne's eyes softened. Penrose muttered about budgets, then shrugged. Sansa dipped quill, noting in firm strokes. Approved. Outside, bells rang vespers. Inside, a council of wolves, stags, roses, sun spears, and unseen dragons forged the dawn word by deliberate word. And those storms would return. As all storms do, the world at that moment turned upon an anvil of shared purpose, sparks rising toward rafters like scattered stars, illuminating the faces of those who chose to shape rather than shatter. Gendry felt the hum of molten possibility, a vibration familiar as heartbeat. He glanced back, Arya watching him, eyes brie. GHT. The hammer within his chest struck once, twice, echoing through bone and hall alike, each beat promising that dynasties, like steel, are not born whole. They are forged, folded, and tempered by fire, struck again and again until dreams hold edge enough to cleave despair. And so the forging continued, beneath banners newly stitched, beneath dragons still circling, beneath seasons turning, until the clang of hammers became the music of a realm reborn, and the memory of blades angled for backs faded like so much slag ground into cobblestones trod now by free men and women unafraid to lift their gaze toward sunrise. Night settled over King's Landing like velvet dipped in ink, mutes in alleyways snuffing their lanterns one by one until the avenues glimmered with only the scattered glow of hearth fires and the steady orange eyes of forge kills that Gendry insisted must never truly sleep. Somewhere below the red keep a street fiddler coaxed a low, mournful tune from catgut, and in the brief lulls between bow strokes the city seemed to hold its breath, waiting to learn whether the dawn would rise on laughter or swords. It rose on neither. It rose on thunder. The first concussion jarred Gendry from a dream of silver sparks and a wolf's smile. He rolled from the pallet bed in Arya's small tower chamber, bare feet slapping cold stone. Another blast shuddered through the walls, rattling the shutters until they banged open and flung pale pre-dawn light across the tangled blankets. Arya was already at the arrow slit, hair loose, eyes squinting into distance. From the bay below, a twisting plume of fire licked the sky, orange-edged with a sickly green that could only be wildfire. She turned, nostrils flaring. Greyjoys. Gendry tugged on breeches, threw his half-buckled breastplate over a linen shirt. I thought Euron's fleet rotted off fair I'll once Quentin's galleys cut his line. Something survived. She buckled her sword belt, slipped dire forge across her back in a diagonal sheath. Or something rose from it. Horns brayed from the city wall. Church bells followed, discordant, drowning the fiddler's last desperate note. Gendry tightened the strap across his chest, grabbed his new shield, a round disc of layered ash wood-plated with river iron, then paused. He caught Arya's wrist. Stay on roofs. You see something the walls miss, you send me word. She kissed his cheek, quick as a sparrow lighting on a branch. I'll bring you a kraken's eye, and I'll mount its beak on the forge door. They parted at the landing. She up, he down. Footsteps echoing in opposite directions. Twin halves of a promise neither would name. The courtyard beneath the red keep churned with armored men shaking sleep from bones. Brienne shouted orders, white cloak billowing as she shoved a gawking squire toward the armory. Tommen dashed across flagstones in a padded jack, hair tousled, clutching dire oath, its too large grip still awkward in his hand, though his wrist had thickened under training. Jon and Sansa emerged side by side. He tightening gauntlets, she in a leather jerkin over dark wool, hair braided back for battle as once her mother's had been beneath the walls of Riverrun. Davos jogged behind carrying 2 bulging satchels of flame pots. Gendry vaulted a stack of crates and skidded to a halt at the map table. "Any word?" "For ships," Jon answered, pointing to a rough sketch of Blackwater Bay. "Slipped the chain booms sometime after moonset. One rammed the wharf at Fisherman's Square. The fire we saw was a Salt Wife sloop exploding after our scorpions lit her." Brienne slapped helm onto close-cropped hair. "Unsullied are mustering at the Gate of the Gods, but Daenerys flew west again 2 nights past. Drogon won't return in time." "That means no sky teeth," Gendry said. "Good. Less timber turns to cinder." Sansa stepped closer, voice low. "The grain quarter warehouses line the riverfront. If wildfire barrels detonate there, we lose half our winter stores." Tommen swallowed. "We must not let them near the quay." Gendry clapped a hand on the boy's shoulder. "You ride with Brienne, shadow her shield. I need your eyes on strength of men, not smell of flame. Davos, bring your satchels to the south parapet. We'll answer green fire with bright flame." He wheeled on Jon, hammered fist into palm. "Mount your dire wolves. Sweep the eastern docks. Flush any Reaver crews skulking under hull shadows."
"No survivors."
Jon nodded once. Ghost padded up, white fur rippling. A silent promise of tooth for tooth. Orders dispatched. Gendry snatched his hammer from a rack of freshly oiled weapons. The haft felt warm, alive, though morning's chill hadn't lifted. He jogged down switchback stairs that opened beside the newly planted weirwood sapling. The pale trunk shivered as he passed, red leaves whispering, and he thought, perhaps foolishly, that the old gods murmured their steel-scented blessing. Outside the Lion Gate, the sight was worse than reports. 2 kraken-prowed galleys, scale-clad in black iron and licked by tongues of chartreuse flame, tossed at anchor within shocking distance of the seawall ballistae. Their decks teemed with long-haired silhouettes barking over the roar of waves. Hooked grapnels arced overhead trailing chains that slapped against crenellations. One chain already bit deep, allowing 100 ironborn to scramble spider-like toward battlements. A city guard collapsed backward, throat spurting. His comrade toppled after, chain dragging both down to the water. Gendry bellowed for archers even as his shoulder slammed a ladder upright. "Bowstrings to the wall. Aim for the bastards on the chain. Drop them, drop them." A flight of Storm's End arrows hissed. 2 climbers pitched backward, pinwheeling, struck. 5 more kept scrambling. Gendry pounded up stone steps 2 at a time. Reaching the parapet, he gripped the chain, links thick as his wrist, and swung the hammer's spike down. Steel rang. Sparks flew. Link cracked but held. A hatchet whistled past, thunking into Merlin mortar. He swung again. Crack! And the link burst. A scream from below signaled the climber's fall as the chain hissed back into the bay and vanished under churning green water. Another boom echoed upriver. The second kraken had fired a fat tar-pitch ball that smashed into a warehouse roof. Flame exploded, belching oily smoke. Gendry cursed. The chain booms stretched heavy across the harbor entrance, but these raiders had slipped inside. Now every second they floated their risked new incendiaries raining onto vital stores. Brienne galloped up the quay, Tommen clinging behind. Oathkeeper flashed as she lopped a grapnel line midair. "We need more water wagons," she shouted. "No time," Gendry rasped. "We knocked them out of range." He scanned the wall for scorpions, but most were still misaligned from Lannister repairs half a moon back. Re-rigging them would waste minutes. His gaze flicked inland, where the skeleton of the old chain tower still rose. The chain that had once barred Stannis' doom still slumbered inside a yawning channel down the riverbed. But its great winch drums had been repurposed months earlier, fitted with lengths of new star steel mesh and 3-ton counterweights forged under his own scheme. A harbor defense net waiting for a test. He slung shield, charged for the tower. 2 harbor guards, startled, snapped salutes. He ordered them to spin the drums. Weights groaned, cables creaked, and with a lurch the mesh unfurled beneath the waterline, shimmering like a silver serpent. One guard gaped. "Lord, that net can foul our own hulls. That's tomorrow's worry." He He yanked the release lever. Counterweights plummeted inside stone shafts, dragging the glinting steel curtain up behind the iron-borne ships. The currents seized it, pulling taut across the channel like a garrote. The nearer Kraken's rudder snagged first. Metal screamed as its helm twisted. Gendry watched the prow yaw sideways, listing. On deck, men shouted in fear and fury, scrambling to cut the invisible snare. A thunderous snap. The farther galley's mast toppled, sails tangling braces, as the net jerked it sideways into the shallow sandbank. Oars snapped like twigs. Reavers pitched over rails. A cheer erupted along the wall. Gendry signaled archers. Flaming arrows now torched the sails. A storm of fire-tipped shafts arced. Canvas caught. Oil stores on decks flashed. Green wildfire barrels still stacked midship detonated. And for a breath the world went bright emerald. The shock hit the wall like a smith's hammer, forced Gendry to his knees, seared his beard tips. But when glare subsided, the Kraken ships were half-ruined hulks blazing orange, drifting upstream toward the chain net that still held them anchored in place, turning them to pyres. By midday only cinders floated, and King's Landing's piers smoldered but stood. Scouts counted 73 iron-borne corpses heaped upon the quay. Prisoners, 14, all missing hands or eyes from old salt rituals. Euron Greyjoy's personal banner, a red-rimmed eye with screaming black pupil, was hauled from charred timbers and nailed above the dockmaster's office as warning. But triumph tasted of coal dust. Grain storehouses number 3 and 4 lay collapsed into molten stone piles. Atop the parapet, Sansa and Tobo Mott surveyed blackened wrecks, calculating lost bushels. Davos paced, muttering about rationing. Gendry, still sweating soot, approached. "We lost perhaps a tenth of supply," Sansa said, calm but pale. "Enough to tighten belts if winter drags." Gendry exhaled. "We'll extend forage radius to Rose Road villages. Stormlanders grow root crop in winter fields. Martell's sent a new convoy by yesterday. We'll make up ground." Tobo Mott frowned. "The forge masters will need grain as pay. Then we triple plowshares before spring," Gendry countered. "Steel for seed." That evening Jon gathered his riders returning from the eastern docks. "We found no raiders here," he said, "but 3 empty skiffs drifted ashore, nets cut. Someone ferried the Kraken troops through the chain gaps." Sansa mouth tightened. "Saboteurs inside the city. Likely Cell-Sails who professed loyalty after the throne changed," Davos guessed. "Coin buys treachery quick." Gendry's eyes hardened. "Not just Cell-Sails. Someone opened the booms for them." Brienne nodded. "I'll speak to the city watch captains. Interrogate the harbor masters one by one." "Do it quiet," Sansa urged. "Spread panic and we feed the next plot." Arya emerged from shadows at Hall's edge, a burlap sack dangling. She appended it onto the map table. 5 severed fingers, each tattooed with Kraken suckers. "Found these on a wharf foreman," she said. "He tried to run after the first blast. Not running anymore." Davos looked away, knuckles white. Tommen gagged but held composure, wiping mouth with sleeve. Penrose muttered a prayer to the mother for lost souls, perhaps for the foreman, perhaps for Arya's sharpening edges. Gendry set a hand atop the grisly pile. "Fear keeps tongues silent. Dread opens them. But if we hand dread a sword, we may cut out our own heart." He gently pushed the fingers back into the sack. "Bury them. We'll put eyes on every harbor gate instead. And we'll tell the people we caught the traitor before he struck." Arya arched brow. "A lie. A shield," he said. She didn't contest, only tied the sack and left. Over the next fortnight, new threats flickered on the horizon like forked lightning. Ravens arrived from Old Town. Archmaester Valen, a staunch Tarly partisan, condemned the Regency Compact as heresy against divine kingship. He urged Reach armies still loyal to House Tyrell's cautious regency to march on King's Landing and restore proper blood. Garland penned a firm reply while dispatching Maester Walgrave south with grandmotherly biscuits and a crate of dusk roses. Sugar for barbs, he claimed, always dulled thorns. From the Vale came rumors of Littlefinger's lingering agents stirring dissent among mountain clans. promising gold for raiding caravans bound for the capital. Arya rode covert along the high road, sliding through moonlit passes, and returned with a satchel of scribbled notes. Bribes, names, maps of goat paths. She laid them before the council. Sansa recognized Baelish's coded sigils, an echo of the snake once coiled round her adolescence. She ordered ravens to Nestor Royce, who dispatched knights into the mountains of the moon, stamping petty insurgency before it sparked. All the while Gendry smelted. In the Street of Steel, his grand forge, dubbed the heart of the hammer by apprentices, echoed day and night. The first order after the throne was chainmail for the harbor watch, doubly riveted rings each half-coated in black lacquer so they blended into shadow. Next came padded winter helms for Northmen now garrisoned south. Boiled leather lined with soft hair fur, lighter than steel yet warm. Then frame and board plows for Stormlander farmers, their leading edges capped with star steel for longevity. The city came to know a new mantra. War builds what peace consumes, peace shapes the next war, but the forge serves both. He slept rarely, often on a cot by the cooling trough, but exhaustion never dulled the satisfaction of watching raw or transform under disciplined fire. Each finished piece felt a step toward a dynasty not measured in bloodline but in crafted necessity. When Arya drifted in to count new arrowheads for her rooftop rangers, she sometimes found him staring at a glowing blade, lost to memory of the first horseshoe he'd hammered in Tobos King's landing stall, a boy ignorant of names bigger than hunger. She would shake his shoulders, tease that he was a king dreaming with eyes open. He'd laugh, forge soot dusting her cheeks, and they'd share a crust of bread in silence, content. Late winter sharpened into fangs. One morning, dawn's red fingers unveiled an ominous sail upon the eastern horizon. Black banner quartered by a golden tri-spiral, sigil of the Lyseni Free Admiral Kalako Kandrios. By midday, glass eyes atop the newly erected watchtower confirmed a convoy of 13 stout warcogs trailing 50-odd merchant hulks. They anchored beyond Scorpion Range, but their message rode the wind like carrion. Lys had come to collect debts. In the council chamber, Tobo Mott read aloud a Lyseni letter flamboyant with purple ink and arrogance. To the self-crowned assembly of usurpers currently occupying King's Landing, the illustrious consortium of Lys hereby submits notice of lien against your city for 15 million golden dragons owed in arrears by the late Queen Cersei Lannister, plus punitive interest. Failure to deliver said sum within 7 days will authorize our consortium to seize assets equal to the outstanding amount, including but not limited to royal jewels, religious relics, and persons of noble birth suitable for indentured contract accordance with Lyseni maritime law. Signed in excellence, Admiral Kalako Kandrios, voice of the consortium, bearer of the golden whip. Sansa folded arms. They want hostages, Penrose spat, and treasure we no longer hold. Davos stroked salt-flecked beard. If we refuse, they mean to blockade the gullet, strangle trade. Jon's dark eyes burned. We can fight them. Northmen longbows outrange Lyseni crossbows. A dragon's pass will scatter cogs like driftwood. But Dragonstrike invites Lys to call on bravos, Sansa observed, and the Iron Bank may side with creditors. Gendry listened, brow furrowed, fingers drummed table. At length he said, "We repay the debt in iron." Brienne frowned. "With what coffers?" "Not coin," Gendry said, eyes alight. "Steel, finished and raw. Every Reach and Stormlands mine sends or here. We forge armaments, they want profit. We offer exclusive contract. Half price for Lys, guaranteed supply for 5 years. They recoup tenfold selling to associate petty wars." Penrose snorted. "Arm our enemies? Arm their enemies' enemies," Davos corrected, the smuggler in him seeing angles. Lys sells to Myr, quarrels with Pentos, fights Tyrosh. None threaten Westeros directly.
Sansa met Gendry's case.
"You gamble trade against tribute. It's what a forge does," he said. "Turns threat into opportunity." After debate tighter than armor straps, the council agreed. They drafted terms swifter than scribes could sharpen quills. 20,000 breastplates, 30,000 spearheads, 5,000 composite bows, each quarter delivered by Moon's turn. In exchange, Lys lifted siege and cancelled debt upon first shipment. The signet of the hammer sealed parchment. Gendry rode a cutter out to the flagship alone, hammer laid across knees. The Lyseni admiral, silk-robed, perfumed, laughed when presented the contract. But the laugh dwindled when Gendry set a freshly forged dagger on railing. Obsidian core edged in star steel, as light as a quill yet singing with potential. First sample, Gendry said. Only Westeros produces this alloy, and only we hold the recipe. Sign or sail home empty. Kalako ran jeweled fingers along the blade, eyes wide. He signed. The fleet departed within the hour, merchant hulks now bearing sealed crates of sample hardware and Lyseni hostages turned eager partners. Trade winds filled sails, but Gendry's vision filled horizons. The heart of the hammer outproducing Esso's smithies, throngs of journeymen arriving to apprentice under new guild charters, a realm richer in metal than gold. Yet metal lured predators. One late evening Brienne burst into the forge yard, helm dented, cloak torn. "Assassins in the tunnels," she gasped. Someone breached the crypt stairs. Gendry, anvil hammer still hot, snatched it barehanded and sprinted after her down midnighter corridors. They burst into a half-finished corridor excavated beneath the keep, part of the new catacomb network designed for drainage. 3 shapes skulked ahead, slender, cloaked, moving with feline grace. Arya dueled 2 alone, Direforge flashing silver shadows. The third, a tall figure with forked beard dyed crimson, held a vial of pale green ichor fizzing under cork. Wildfire, Gendry roared. The man spun, flung the vial. Instinct swung his hammer head. Glass shattered mid-arc. Green flame burst, licking the ceiling harmlessly high. Heat singed eyebrows. Arya impaled one assassin through kidneys, ducked, pivoted. Her blade and Gendry's hammer converged on the last. Blood spurted, then stillness. Bodies sprawled amid sulfur scent. Brienne exhaled. "Who?" Arya wiped blade on cloak. She sells red kisses. Lyseni night blossom toxin on daggers. She crouched, yanked a ring from a finger. Stylized lion's head. Someone pays well to kill this council. Sansa arrived with lantern, shock quickly masked by poise. Proof of conspiracy will help sway uncertain lords. Gendry breathed out, looked at Arya, her shoulder bleeding. He tore a strip of his shirt, bound it amid throbbing forge callus. She hissed, then smiled crooked. "Missed my heart." "Impossible," he murmured. She smirked, but depth in her eyes said she understood. He squeezed her wrist, heat of near loss forging steel inside his ribs. Spring equinox came early, blossoms sprouting between cobblestones where last year blood dried. The festival of forging, declared fortnight prior, filled the street of steel with processions. Apprentices marched behind banners shaped like anvils. Minstrels sang of the boy who rose from flea bottom soot to hammer kingships into thrones of mercy. Gendry stood on a newly erected dais outside Heart of the Hammer, sweat darkening linen, listening with polite discomfort as poets oversold his heroism. Beside him Arya fidgeted ITC. Hing to slip away to rooftops. Sansa took the podium. Her speech, serene yet fierce, framed Gendry's forging as metaphor for unity. Metal folded upon metal becomes stronger than single ore. So too are kingdoms, welded by storms and winters alike. The crowd roared. Tommen beamed, now 13, voice newly cracked but steady, reciting a vow to guard Smith's guild rights. Jon raised a mug of mulled cider, ghost of a smile ghosting his winter beard. When dusk washed the city in pastel lavender, Gendry retreated to the private rooftop where he and Arya sometimes dined on leftover soldiers' stew. Tonight she sprawled upon a quilt, dire forge across knees, watching the first stars prick sky. He joined her, joints throbbing from dancing forced on him by eager blacksmith's daughters. "You danced," she teased, nudging with bare toe. "Was dragged. Still danced. Robert's blood after all." He grinned, laced his fingers with hers. Silence stretched into comfortable hush broken only by distant revel drums. At last he cleared throat. "I sent ravens to Storm's End this morning. Henley's forging the Hall of School's foundation. I also asked Lord Penrose to request a septon." Her brows lifted. "To bless the school? To bless a wedding," he said softly. She studied him, unblinking, gray eyes catching starlight. He felt his heart trip like hammer on slippery anvil. Then she leaned, pressing forehead to his. "Blades pair best in matched sheaths," she whispered. Heat flared behind his ribs. "So you'll forge together," she said, and kissed him. The city's bells tolled midnight as they sat wrapped in cloak, watching fireworks. Alchemical flares launched from the Pyromancer's Guild, blooming red, then orange, then emerald in arcs over the bay. Charmed sparks drifted like meteors between towers, dissolving before roofs. For once, wildfire blossomed without burning. The wedding took place inside Storm's End's ancient godswood 3 moons later, beneath gale-shorn oaks whose roots gnawed cliffstone. Arya wore a simple gray gown cinched with a braided wolf-stag belt. Gendry, a black tunic adorned only by a small silver hammer pin at throat. The wind tried to tear their words away, but Brienne, officiant of both the Seven and the old gods by rights of her father's broken oath, spoke louder than wind, vows hammered like rivets. Sansa served as lady witness, smiling gentle. Jon as sword-bearer offered Direforge, laid across their joined palms. Tommen scattered hammered nail tokens for Stormlander children to gather, laughter rolling up the cliffs like surf. Davos stood aside, wiping something from eye, muttering that onions could make a man weep even in salt breeze. When the feast ended, Arya guided Gendry along moonlit ramparts. Below, breakers smashed white against black rock. Above, storm clouds flickered with sheet lightning. She turned, resting palms on crenellation. "A dynasty forged, then," she said. He entwined his fingers with hers. "Not dynasty," he corrected, voice quiet but firm.
En alliance.
He pointed seaward. "Storms here taught me. A single wave might shatter rock, but it recedes. Waves together transform coastlines." She leaned into his shoulder, watching the horizon. "Then we'll keep making waves." Lightning flashed again, illuminating their forms. The broad-shouldered Smith Lord, the slender wolf blade, in stark relief against night's canvas. Thunder followed, but softer than before, as if acknowledging shared claim. They stayed until first raindrops peppered stone. Then they walked hand in hand to the chambers once reserved for kings, now warmed by a forge's glow transplanted within a fireplace, embers pulsing like a heart beneath hammer and blade crossed above mantle. Years slid like molten iron through tongs. Tommen reached majority, tall, thoughtful, voice resonant when he debated crop levies with maesters. At 19, he abdicated the narrower title King of the Undulls, instead accepting the council's elected post High Steward of the Dragon Throne, first among equals, not master of them. Daenerys returned once more, landing Drogon upon Storm's End's windswept yard to witness a realm not just alive but evolving beyond ancient ruts. She flew north after 1 moon, leaving behind 3 dragon eggs, each as pale as winter sunrise, gifts for scholars hoping to unravel secrets of controlled flame. The heart of the hammer birthed new wonders, water-powered trip hammers crushing or piston bellows fed by windmills, long-barreled siege culverins throwing stones farther than trebuchets. Gendry often stepped back, awed, sweeping steel chips from gray-flecked beard, whispering thanks to the child in him who once dreamed only of a quill of copper coins. Arya founded the Shadow School above the smithy roofs, training orphans in rooftopper's arts. Silent movement, precise aim, code of protective shadows. She traveled far, north to Bear Island repelling slaver raiders, east to Pentos tracking Lyseni slavers who violated contracts, west to the Stepstones where she rescued Quentyn Martell's sister from ransom pirates. But she always returned to Storm's End, to evenings by the hearth where Direforge hung above mantle and Gendry whittled small wooden stags for the children they never had but found anyway. Street urchins adopted into forge apprenticeships, given names as bright as new steel. One autumn, a courier galloped with news that the Citadel had opened a Collegium Metallum in Old Town, inviting masters from Storm's End to lecture on starsteel forging. Gendry laughed until tears cut soot lines on cheeks, then kissed Arya at the harbor as she boarded a ship to accompany the first cohort. She would lecture on blade balance, he teased, and maybe show archmasters how to climb rafters unseen. When she returned months later, winter had blanketed the Stormlands in rare snow. She found Gendry on the parapet, gray in beard but eyes still storm blue, hammer across shoulders surveying white-capped waves. She told him the maesters had chosen a new symbol for their forging discipline, a wolf embracing a stag above a crossed hammer and needle. He pulled her close, pressed lips to her frost-kissed brow, and murmured that symbols only mattered if men remembered stories behind them. She replied that they would, because songs now sung not only of dragons and iron thrones, but of the blacksmith lord and the faceless wolf who tempered the world one spark at a time. Lightning forked distant clouds, but the thunder rolled soft, like a lullaby spoken by the sea itself. And in that hush the realm breathed easy, knowing storms could forge rather than fell, and that after every hammer blow, there remained steady hands ready to shape what rose from flame. Thus the dynasty of the hammer and wolf endured, neither empire nor kingdom but a continual act of creation, each generation folding its metal over the last, welding strength to strength until the edge of their shared dream stayed keen enough to sever fear from future and carve a world where the voices of the forge and the cadence of the heart rang in unified, unending rhythm.